A famous beatitude, and a beatitude is a blessing, if we go by the Bible. Blessing credited to the former American president, Herbert Hoover. He's the one that said, "Blessed are the young, for they shall inherit the national debt." You know, the Debt Management Office, DMO, headed by Patience Oniha, has confirmed that Nigeria's debt profile stands at 41.6 trillion naira. She spoke at the ongoing engagement on the 2023-2025 medium-term expenditure framework, MTEF, and fiscal policy paper organized by the House of Reps Committee on Finance. A breakdown reveals that about 80% of the total debt owed is by the federal government. And until the issues of the personnel overhead and capital expenditure are properly addressed in the budget, borrowing would not stop. Emeka, there must be a way out.
Well, the way out is fiscal discipline. The way out is to cut the cost of governance. The way out is to curb oil theft in the Niger Delta. Because you cannot be infusing blood into a patient who is hemorrhaging, who is bleeding. You stop the bleeding first. Then you stabilize the patient. Then you go ahead to give the patient blood. But what is going on right now is that there's so many leakages. And you find out that even people within the government, like the Controller General of Customs, Hamid Ali, have come out to say that, look, some of the figures being bandied about concerning the oil industry are fictitious. Even the Minister of State for Petroleum, Timi Silva, said these figures are fictitious. The Controller General of Customs...
You think a particular fellow or...
Some people in government are actually sabotaging the efforts of the government to ensure fiscal discipline.
Okay.
You hear some top operatives, the other day the national chairman of APC was saying that Nigeria can borrow to eternity. Who does that? You only borrow to finance projects, policies, programs that will
benefit the people,
and will largely pay their way back. You don't just borrow to infinity, just keep
because
borrowing.
You want to.
You see, borrowing is not, there is no country that has enshrined it in its constitution that one of the directive principles of government shall be borrowing, endless borrowing. There is no country in the world. All countries, almost all countries in the world, are indebted in one way or the other. But the point is, see, the idea, even the chairman of that committee made a comment I felt was unfortunate. He said, he said, yes, that from what we see, Nigeria can still borrow and borrow. You're not even talking of what we are not getting internally. The Controller General of Customs, Hamid Ali, said, you are quoting a certain figure of fuel consumption. That is not true. Where do these trucks pass? That we are talking of a deficit of 500 trucks. We don't know where these trucks pass through. Where do they go to? And so, you see, it has come to a point where we cannot continue to deceive ourselves. Because that figure, it was as at March. But in the intervening period, Delta State talked about borrowing 150 billion, Anambra 100 billion, and some other states. So I believe that by the time they put all this together, it will be more than that. Then you now add what the federal government is talking of borrowing for next year, talking of subsidy. Do we still need a fuel subsidy?
All right, Paul, the layman would say, but why do the creditors still borrow Nigeria money? Because the creditor knows you are credible, you will pay your debts eventually.
Yes,
and
definitely we are paying, we are servicing our debts. But the problem with our debt servicing is that we are spending more than we are earning. Between January and April, we're told that the retained government revenue is 1.63 trillion and 1.94 trillion was used to service debt within the same period. There's no problem with borrowing, but borrowing becomes a problem when you cannot generate enough revenue to service your debt, then stop borrowing. So you have to think of different ways to raise your revenue. He talked about theft. We are losing a lot of money over oil theft and corruption. Apart from, many people are not paying taxes in this country.
Yeah.
Many people are not paying taxes in this country. How do you get people to pay taxes?
I think somebody at the session raised the issue of earning power, earning capacity of the country. We're not earning.
That's the truth of the matter. We are not earning. And then we are borrowing. Borrowing for what? Then a lot of projects, I know that some projects are being done on maybe BOT basis, but we need to do more projects like that. You know, BOT, there's BOT, there's BOOT.
Yeah.
You know, let's just be very innovative.
BOT means
build, operate, and transfer. Then
Okay.
BOT means build, own, operate, and transfer. You see, because what we are doing is that we are creating a serious burden for the next administration. And Nigerians, because we continue to tell the same stories.
Yeah.
Next year, it will be the same story.
Yeah.
It's unfortunate.
Emeka, at this point, I feel like quoting the Spanish proverb. Perhaps you've heard about it. Debts are like children. The smaller they are, the more noise they make. And I desire to expand it. The bigger the debts are, the more silent they appear to be.
Yeah, that's the problem. There was an interesting question you asked my colleague. You said that the creditor feels the borrower or the debtor borrower, the debtor borrower can pay.
That's why he keeps crediting.
But there is that assumption. We don't have to get to a point where we cannot even service the day-to-day running of government. It shouldn't get to that point. Now, borrowing should be a last resort. You should first of all ensure that all loopholes, are closed. Leakages are blocked. You should ensure that your eyes are on revenue to GDP. But you're looking at debt to GDP, that no problem, our debt is still sustainable. So it's now as if it has become a state policy.
A way of life.
It's a very easy way, so just keep hunting around.
Yeah.
And let me tell you one interesting thing. Part of the problem also has to do with the consultants, lawyers, accountants, and politicians in the middle of these borrowings. You see, the Zambian president, Chelema, this morning, he tweeted something. He said Zambia has been able to reach an agreement with IMF on a program without involving consultants. Check his Twitter handle. Without involving consultants. So they have even seen it, that consultants are part of the problem. What they take out of it, look at the issue governors are having with the Paris Club reforms. 418 million that some consultants are demanding. Now, all of these things, when you remove 418 million, when you convert it, that is a lot of money.
Oh, yeah.
If you put it into education, if you put it into health, social services, you will feel the impact. So we also need to remove those middlemen.
What bothers me is, you mentioned it in passing, our oil gets stolen.
We don't even know. Do we even know
how much?
We have, like one of my former bosses used to say, we have a counting problem in Nigeria. We don't know how many we are. We don't know how many barrels of oil we consume, or even we generate, what we pick from the earth. We don't even know. So we need to sort out.
We hardly can meet the OPEC production
1.72 million. We can't even meet it because a lot of what we pump is stolen.
Okay. Neither a lender nor a borrower be. As here, all we do here is to, based on the facts available to us, we help mold opinion. Yes, Nigeria may have the wherewithal to absorb these debts, but we must know when to apply the brakes. Okay, we